Good morning. This is Dr. Pola Rosen from Education Update. I'm here with my co-publisher, Adam Sugerman, and we are honored to be here with Commissioner John King. Thank you so much. May I call you John?
Please.
For making the time for us today. And we have only 100 questions for you, John, so I hope that you'll take the time to answer a few of them.
Sounds fine.
So let me launch by saying that there's been an ongoing controversy in our nation between establishing charter schools and eliminating failing schools. And you were the very successful leader of a charter school in Boston. And you also were the recipient of a public school education as well. So you really are so well tuned to talking about charter schools, failing schools, public schools, and even the private schools, because I know you went to one as well. What do you think about that controversy, and what is your position?
Sure. I think for me, I'm most committed to having excellent schools, whether they're charter schools or district schools. I think the question for our state, for any school district, is how do you ensure that every child has the opportunity to go to an excellent school, regardless of that child's zip code? And so we need to look very closely at what are the strengths of those charter schools that are excelling and those district schools that are excelling. And I think often it turns out they have very similar strengths, right? They have excellent teachers. They have a rich and enriching curriculum that not only gives students the basic skills they need, but also includes rich social studies and science instruction, the arts and athletics and enrichment opportunities. There are schools often that have more time, because we know, especially for some of our struggling students or high-need students, they need a longer school day, a longer school year. There are often schools where there's great attention to student work and student performance, and teachers are always asking themselves, how do I help students get better? How do I use information about student performance, not just to sort students, but actually to change my instructional practice and help students learn at a higher level? And there are schools that engage families and communities in supporting students' academic and social development. So when I think about it, I'm much less concerned about the governance structure of the school and more concerned about whether or not the school is delivering those things for students and families.
But unfortunately, we have certain factions. And I'll talk about New York State or New York City, not the rest of the country,
Sure.
although it certainly applies. We're the largest school district in the nation. But you have the unions who are militant against the closing of schools. You have parents in neighborhoods that say, we don't want charter schools in here because they're taking up the space for public schools and they're taking money away from the public schools. So if a school is not delivering to students and is not performing, what do you do?
Well, sometimes there are schools that need to close, and I think it's clear that sometimes the culture of a school can become so dysfunctional that it's almost impossible to get the school back on track. But I think oftentimes there are schools that are struggling where, with the right leadership, the right professional development for staff, the right support, the school can get back on track. And I think the challenge for any superintendent around the state, certainly for New York City, is trying to figure out which category does each school fall into when they have struggling schools. Is this a school where there's a core of teachers who are excellent in their instruction and can be models for the rest of their colleagues? Are there teachers who really want to get better but haven't had access to the right professional development? Is it possible to repair the relationship between the school and families and communities?
Yes.
And if those things are possible, then I think the school's performance can be turned around.
I think to expand on this a little bit, I guess a key question would be when to intervene if intervention is needed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a particular time frame?
I think it's important to intervene before things sort of fall off the cliff in a sense. And I think we see sometimes that, sometimes because of enrollment patterns, you see a school where the performance is struggling, the school begins to get a reputation in the community as a school that's struggling, and so they're under-enrolled, and they don't have the resources necessarily to try and create new programs, improve their performance, and you get into a sort of a downward spiral. So from my perspective, as soon as a school is at risk, we've got to think about what are the supports that are going to help that school improve. I think one of the weaknesses of how we've approached education reform over the last decade is that we've had a focus on high accountability, but we've had low support. And a high accountability, low support environment is one in which I think people tend to cut corners and people tend to get very angry and frustrated. Whereas what I would like to see is an environment of high accountability and high support, so that people know, yes, they're accountable for their performance, but they also know they're going to get the help, the support, the coaching.
That's such an excellent, excellent point. Recently, Bloomberg News had a piece on the fact that there'll be $4.4 billion flowing into New York State from several big companies, including Intel, IBM, Samsung, among others. And Governor Andrew Cuomo said this will create thousands of jobs. Naturally, we're thrilled that we're going to be getting more jobs in New York and New York State particularly. And I just wondered whether you could expand on what kinds of jobs can we expect to have. And kudos to Governor Cuomo.
Sure. No, I think that economic development is obviously a high priority for the governor and the mayor. And I think it's something that they've invested a lot of their personal time and energy in, which is critical. The challenge is, will we have the workforce ready for those jobs?
Yes.
And one of the things that's very worrisome is that when you look at the college and career readiness of our high school graduates, it's not where it needs to be. And so we know we have, for example, in the state, we graduate about 73% of our students from high school in the prior school year. And yet when we look at how many of those students are actually college and career ready, we think the number is more like 37% of the original cohort that started in 2006 actually graduated in 2010 ready for college and careers. And we know that statewide in our two-year schools, our community colleges, over 40% of students are enrolled in remedial courses when they enter. So they're basically taking high school courses as college students. And in the city, in the two-year institutions at CUNY, 75% of the entering students are in remedial courses. So what we know is we have lots of students who are graduating, but they're actually not ready to do work at the next level.
Exactly.
And many technical jobs, even if they don't require a college degree, require some post-secondary training and require exactly the same kind of skills that a student would need to succeed in a first-year community college program. So we've got a lot of work to do to ensure that our schools are graduating students who are truly college and career ready. That's the reason the Regents adopted new standards, new Common Core standards, which are actually mapped backwards from college and careers. And now our work involves providing professional development and training and resources so that teachers and schools can meet those new standards.
So skills would need, kind of the skills would be cross-platform over, say, you learn a particular skill that can be applied to not only the test,
That's
but
right.
also to...
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. For example, one of the things that the Common Core asks teachers to do is to focus more attention on nonfiction reading or informational texts. Because it turns out when students get to college and careers, that's typically what they're asked to read. Here's the history textbook, here's the science research article, here's the technical manual in a job that doesn't require a college degree but may require technical training. Right? And so that's a lot of nonfiction text, but oftentimes in our K-12 system, we're almost exclusively focused on literature, which is important, but not the only kind of text students need to be prepared for. And so if you train students to be prepared to grapple with nonfiction text, then they'll be more successful in college and careers, whatever is put in front of them.
If teachers want to accommodate or revise the curriculum in some way so that they can then train those high school students, we're not even in college yet, to be prepared for these $4.4 billion pumped into the economy here, is there a resource, is there a place where we can go and see, hey, these are the jobs of the 21st century. This is what I want to prepare for, this is what I want to do. And then we can talk about how to do it. But is there a manual or someplace you can direct?
We're building towards that. So we just launched recently a new website for the department called engageny.org. And on that website, we've got over a dozen hours of professional development video on the Common Core. And it describes how does instruction need to change at the classroom level to help students be successful with respect to the Common Core. What does math instruction that ensures students are ready for college and careers look like? We've also got professional development activities. We've got some sample instructional materials. And we're going to use our Race to the Top money. We were fortunate to win the federal Race to the Top grant. We're going to use some of that money to build actually a curriculum in English language arts and literacy, K through 12. It won't be mandatory, but it'll provide resources at every grade level for all students, for a wide range of skill levels at every grade level. We'll also build a math curriculum for the full range of students, K through 12. So what we're hoping to do is have resources that teachers can go to right there on the website that they can actually turn around and use in their classroom. And if people create things that are better, we'll add them too.
You know, I'm going to ask one last question, then pass it to Adam. We were down, Education Update went down to Occupy Wall Street just a few days ago. In fact, it was on Tuesday. And we spoke to students. That was our focus. Some of them were undergraduates, 2 were from community colleges, one was a graduate student. And the major problem that they were all having, there was a very common thread. One was, we can't pay back our loans. Number 2, I don't know what kind of job to have. Number 3, I've applied for 150 jobs and nobody called me back, and I don't know what I'm going to do to survive. This young lady took a job as a bartender for a year and a half just to make her ends meet, and she had a bachelor's degree. What do you suggest? These are, you know, they're such excellent young people. What are they supposed to do?
Yeah. I think unfortunately we have often a mismatch between the skills that students have and the jobs that are available in the marketplace. It's actually shocking as you look around the country, the number of jobs that are unfilled in technical careers where there just aren't the people prepared with the right skills. So one of the things we've got to get better at doing is ensuring that our high schools are exposing students to some of the career and technical opportunities. I was at Aviation High School in Queens recently, and you've got an actual hangar in the school where students are working on repairing the planes, right? Right, and you can see these are students. They're very clear about what they're going to be able to do. They're getting real skills, and there's a whole set of jobs all around the country that are ready and waiting for them. I was at Barry Tech, which is it's the BOCES, the Board of Cooperative Educational Services program in Nassau County.
Okay.
Barry Tech, they have a welding program. There's huge demand for welders around Long Island, and people come to the Barry Tech asking for their welders because they know the kids who graduate from Barry Tech have strong welding skills. And so we've got to do a better job, I think, aligning what we're doing in K through 12 with what jobs are actually available. And then when kids get to college, then they're making choices again that match to what are the available jobs. One of the things we struggle with in teaching is that so many young people as undergraduates are enrolled in programs that will lead to childhood certification. We have too many people with childhood certification and not enough jobs. What we don't have are bilingual teachers, right? The ESL teachers, math and science at the high school level, right? And so what we need to do is do a better job at the high school level and at the college level, saying to students, hey, let's look at what the job market actually has, and take those extra 5 or 6 language courses so that you can also get your bilingual or ESL certification.
Great advice, Adam. That
is terrific advice. How would you encourage more parents to get involved in their kids' education?
I think part of it is making school accessible to families. When I was a principal, as a middle school principal, one of the things we did was we put the homework on the voicemail of the school every night. So when I would meet with parents before their kids started in 6th grade, I would say, look, we're going to have homework in every class, every night. And your middle schooler is never going to be able to say to you, I don't know what the homework is, I forgot the homework, I don't think the teacher gave us homework today, I misplaced the piece of paper, can I call my friend and talk to them for 45 minutes to get the homework? No, you just call the voicemail of the school, and you press a button and says, tonight the 6th grade homework is X, Y, and Z. And one of the things we found was it made school so much more accessible to families. We had one mother who was not able to read, and her daughter filled out every form she ever filled out at the school. But she would call the homework hotline and then have her daughter go through each of the assignments and say, oh, this is what I did, or this is what I didn't do, or this is what I found hard. And so she said to me about the homework hotline is the first time she ever got to actually participate in her daughter's homework, which was just powerful. And so we were constantly looking for opportunities to get families engaged in the sort of academic and social life of this school. Middle school parents often feel like, well, now my kid's too old for me to read to them. Right? That's for little kids. And we would say, no. In middle school, you can actually read with your child. You can get a novel that you read together. You can read the New York Times together, that kind of thing.
Having some middle schoolers in our family, I love that idea of the middle school information hotline. Is it possible to do that when you have a very large middle school?
Sure, increasingly, I mean, whether it's putting something on the web or using voicemail boxes, you know, I guess it's the notion that part of the responsibility of the school is to figure out how to bring parents into the school and welcome them into the school, as opposed to saying, well, you know, parents just don't come or they don't want to participate. Actually, most parents desperately want to participate and they need the path sort of cleared for them by the school.
It's common at middle school especially that the kids don't want the parents to be involved.
Right.
Regarding to the school environment, some people keep their children home from school. They homeschool their kids, sometimes for religious reasons, but other times because the parents don't feel that the schools are a safe environment for their children. Also, bullying is a very big issue, and it always has been. It's just now kids have more access, it seems, to guns and to more dangerous weapons. How do you propose, or can you propose anything that would alleviate these problems?
Sure, it's a huge challenge, no question. I think the key is that principals and teachers, as the adults in the building, need to create a culture that is safe and supportive for students. And so one of the keys is helping them have the skills to be able to create that kind of culture, right? And one of the things we're trying to change about principal and teacher preparation is to have creating the right kind of school culture be a part of how we prepare teachers and principals. Right? As a principal, you ought to be thinking about in your principal preparation, you know, what are the norms that you're going to create about how we walk in the hall, how we talk to our peers, how we solve problems, and the principal setting that tone in the building. But also teachers, through how they teach, can also set that tone.
Sure.
Right? If you create assignments that require students to collaborate, and you teach collaboration skills through rigorous academic activities, you can create better norms. And you also have to have the courage as a community of adults to say, there are some behaviors in this community that we're not going to tolerate. And we're going to insist that your parent come in, grandma, whoever it is who's responsible for you, come in for a conversation about those norms. We're not going to allow students in this building to treat each other in certain ways. And I think sometimes folks are hesitant to insist on a standard of behavior, and I think that's critical.
I want to segue into your personal life for one moment. If you could change one thing about your own education, what would that be?
It's an interesting question. You know, I can't really think of something I would change. I feel very blessed by the education that I had. And, you know, in difficult periods in my personal life, school was this safe, rigorous, enriching place that was really almost a sanctuary from some of the things that were going on outside of school. So I feel very, very fortunate. I had teachers at PS 276 and Clarence between junior high school and Coney Island who just, you know, they're the reason I'm here today, and certainly the reason I'm doing this job. And so I feel very fortunate.
What a great testament to public education
Yes.
you have just made. I just wondered, what kind of education do you want to provide for your own children? I know you have two daughters.
Yeah. To me, the key is that I want their intellectual curiosity always to be fed, and I want them to always feel like there's opportunity to constantly learn new things. Right? You asked about the transferability of knowledge and skills. Right? The one thing I know is true, not only for my own daughters, but for all students today, is we can't even begin to imagine the world that they will be in 50 years from now, right? They will engage with all kinds of technology that we can't envision. There'll be all sorts of political and social questions that they'll have to grapple with that we can't envision. The thing we can give them are the set of tools that they'll need to confront that, right? And the ability to go find out information, to use multiple resources, to evaluate those resources for their validity, to problem solve, to work with each other to solve problems. So my hope is for my own daughters that they have a set of skills that will feed their intellectual curiosity, feed a love of learning, that will then carry them through their lives.
Adam, I pass to you.
Do your children go to public school?
They go to a Montessori school.
Okay.
They go to a Montessori school in part because I like the way in which Montessori school really is designed to support students' curiosity. There's a lot of structure. The adults create the structure. But the Montessori model is that within that structure, then students have real responsibility to pursue their interests and to figure out how they're going to execute on the different activities that the adults have created for them.
Right. In line with that, the education update staff yesterday, and it's on video, played with the Cuisinart rods in a Bronx school. So we know about problem solving in that fashion, and it was wonderful.
That's right.
Absolutely. I was a
right.
student yesterday. I just have one or two other things. What are the most important ingredients to providing best education?
Well, there are a lot of pieces, but I'd say some of the most important are a rich and rigorous curriculum and the right content in front of students and teachers, and then excellent teaching. Right? And then there's a set of supports you need around excellent teaching. Right? That means you need a school leader who's a strong instructional leader, who's able to coach and support teachers. You need time for teachers to collaborate and learn from each other. You need continuous feedback so that you're not isolated in your classroom, but you're actually getting good feedback on your performance. So there are things that come around excellent teaching, but I think if you have the rigorous material in front of students and fabulous teaching, you're going to have a great school. And then there's the engagement with families and communities to support the kind of community and culture that you run in the school. But it really starts with, I think, rigorous curriculum and rigorous instruction.
And my last question, unless you have a last question, Adam.
Well, let me ask my question
Go ahead,
because it
please
kind of
do.
feeds into your
Sure.
answer.
Go ahead.
You talked about really good, very effective teachers, and we know that there are many teachers who struggle. Some of the Race to the Top funding is earmarked toward rewarding effective educators and also to target professional development for teachers who are struggling. And it's I don't have the exact figure in front of me, but it's quite a bit of money. Once the Race to the Top funding is exhausted, do you foresee additional funding for this, and for how long? I mean, this will be sort of a lifetime endeavor.
Well, two things that we need to do, I think, to change how we organize education to support good, ongoing professional development and performance management. One is we need an evaluation system that helps us understand who is excelling, so we can use their practice as a model for others. Who's in the middle and can get help and can then make dramatic improvements, and who's struggling and really needs intensive support. And so one thing we're trying to build for the long term is an evaluation system that helps us to do that. The second thing is we need an understanding in our sector that professional development isn't a luxury. It isn't an extra. It isn't the thing that you cut first. We don't want to be, if you think about what happened in Detroit with the auto industry, they cut their investments in research and development and consequently fell behind their competitors in terms of quality. I think of professional development the same way. We've got to continually invest in the people in education, principals and teachers, or you will fall behind our competitors.
Absolutely.
And so we're trying to we have an infusion, in a sense, of federal dollars to support professional development, but we also are trying to create a culture where what we do is we do performance management. We figure out who needs help and we get them differentiated support.
My last question is, Obama and Duncan have changed some of the requirements for measuring the success of an education program, and they via the standardized tests. What's your opinion about that change?
Well, I think it's an evolving process because Congress is also looking at this set of issues. But the President and the Secretary have proposed a set of waivers around No Child Left Behind that I think are really designed to make sure that we're identifying the right schools as struggling. And I think the nuance that they're adding is that we look not only at absolute performance, but we also look at growth. And we ask, is this school on a trajectory towards growth? And it might be a school that is, in the middle, but is stuck. And that school might need attention because students aren't growing. Or it might be a school at the bottom that, ought to be growing dramatically and isn't, and so we have to worry. So the growth component, I think, to me makes a lot of sense because we don't want to wrongly identify a school as needing very intensive intervention that actually is making very significant year-over-year progress. And we want to reward that year-over-year progress. But the thing we have to be careful about is that we don't lose sight of the fact that we do need people to reach a minimum standard in order to be successful in college and careers. And the other thing we have to be careful of that we don't lose is one of the strengths of, what I think of as one of the strengths of No Child Left Behind, which is the focus on subgroup performance and paying close attention to how are the English language learners doing in the school, how are students with disabilities doing, how are students of color doing. One of the things the mayor and Chancellor Walcott are focused on rightly, I think, is how are the male students of color doing, because that's a population that's particularly struggling in our schools. And so, as Congress begins to work on this alongside the President and the Secretary, one of the things I'm concerned with is making sure we still pay close attention to the subgroup performance as part of any accountability system.
And how will that be measured? Are the standardized tests going to be used as the yardstick?
That will be part of it, still the standardized tests, and be both absolute performance and growth. But then we'll also be able to look at certainly graduation rates, readiness for college and careers. So is the performance such that students will be able to succeed at the next level? One of the things that the President and Secretary are also looking for is for us to focus not just on English language arts and math, but also to look at science and social studies performance. The other thing we're doing is we're also trying to change the standardized test to ask students to do more writing, more critical thinking, more of the things that we know translate into success in college and careers.
Last question?
That was it. That was
We
it.
wrapped it up. Thank you
Thanks
so
very
much
much.
for having us. This was
Oh, it was a
wonderful.
fun
We look
conversation.
forward to your leadership.
Thanks very much.